Welcome back, Troglodytes, to another episode of Trogly's Guitars. If you guys watched that catalog video I did about a month ago, I said I've never seen one of these even for sale. And when I saw this one, I also found a few others, but when I saw this one, I knew I just had to get it and do a review on it, because these things have been very curious to me. This is not a 60s melody maker, which you might guess at first. This is actually the late 70s reissue of the 65-ish melody makers. They're kind of goofy little things. It's somewhat a mix of an SG's finish and kind of body shape, kind of mixed with a Les Paul. They're kind of funky abominations, but there's something lovable about these. They might not do a lot for you, as far as pictures go, but playing them, wow, these are really fantastic guitars. Unfortunately, I don't have a 60s one at the shop currently, so I can't really do a 100% compare and contrast, showing you the differences, but I sure as heck can tell you all the differences. This 71 is freaky, and when I say freaky, I mean it's freaky because of all the different things. Because when you see this body shape, you think, okay, 60s, it's gonna kind of have a rounded headstock and just, a funky profile. But no, the headstock is still fairly pointed on the edges, and it's got the open book. And the 60s ones did have that, but they were a little bit more rounded. So this is definitely a more streamlined headstock. I don't think it's quite as thin as they were either. Something I noticed right away, and this is what I was really curious about, is the neck profile that they would have. So I can finally suggest the correct melody maker for people. The 60s melody makers, these double cuts, had a shallower nut width. They're actually smaller up towards the front of the neck, which some people can find a little bit cramped for their hands. So if you got larger hands, definitely seek out one of these 70s melody makers, because this is pretty much your standard nut width. It feels pretty much like any guitar that you're gonna play from Gibson from that time frame. However, I really like the 60s ones, the profiles, because they're, I don't know, the neck just feels a little bit more round. I think they have larger necks. This is more of a 60s profile, where I'd say the 60s ones kind of have a, just a little bit more to them. So this is definitely, up the alley for people that like that standard nut width. And another difference between the 70s reissue and the 60s ones is these have an intonatable bridge here and tailpiece. The original ones just had a wraparound bridge that you could kind of intonate a little bit, but not the best. So this is definitely, for the more advanced guitarist, if, intonation is really important to you, getting it just right, because you can have that option there. Something else you'll notice is the body shape is also a little bit different. The original ones kind of looked a little more goofy than these. These are kind of more symmetrically, perfect, versus the other ones, they kind of curved in a little bit more, and they kind of looked really weird and oblong. They looked more fish-like. It's kind of hard to describe, but if you take a look at this photo here, you can kind of see what I'm talking about. These ones also had a better heel joint on them. They're more closely related to the SGs of the era. Finish-wise, they look about the same. I would say the 60s ones look a little more alive. It's kind of hard to really, say a lot. Maybe it's just because they've aged more and this one doesn't really have finish checking besides like nicks and dings. But when you flip it to the back, that's when things get freaky. Look at this. There's a volute on the back. It's like, okay, that's interesting. That's the first thing that made me fall in love with this 70s reissue, is they did in fact put the volute on this model, and you got these funky tuners. But what I really liked is they stayed true to like the 60s style, putting on the serial number. It almost looks like they were like lightly ink stamped on. And, you know, during this time frame, they were stamping them, so that is a really cool, you know, nod to the 60s ones. I really enjoyed that. So that looks familiar, but, you know, it's a lot longer than a 60s one. It's just your standard 73, 14, 70, 58, and there is a made in USA. These were actually Kalamazoo made, believe it or not. And these are your standard tuners for like on flying V's of the era. But hopefully that's kind of enough about the history and the differences between a 60s and a 70s one of these. Really, what it comes down to is price. These 70s ones can be a little bit more expensive because they're a little bit more rare. Not necessarily desirable, but definitely, you know, cool guitars. But it really comes down to what type of nut width you like, because it affects how wide the neck is. But as you go up on like a 60s one, it becomes this really nice full profile. I would say it's a little bit more rounded in general, where this is a wider feeling fretboard all the way up. If you like that wider nut width, definitely go with the 7. Alright, let's take a look at the condition here now that we've got the differences behind us. The headstock is fairly clean. You can see some light dust and light scratches, but nothing too bad. You're going to notice I have a piece of electrical tape here. The nut kind of needs replaced. The slots have kind of worn down a little bit where it starts to sound like a sitar if it's an open note. So I kind of put that there to prevent that. As you can hear, it sounds normal. Kind of hear that buzz. That was really extreme on this 3rd string here. So I put that piece of tape there. So you might want to get a new nut on this one. I mean, as it is now, it plays fine, but I would definitely just leave that piece of tape there. It doesn't really bother you too much. Gorgeous rosewood fretboard on this one. The frets show minor wear. You can see some light wear and tear. I would say the frets of the 60s ones are probably a little bit taller. These were kind of, you know, stock. They were a little flatter. But it kind of makes it easier to slide, so this is like a really good jazz guitar. But this thing surprised me. You know, the 60s one surprises me too. I've never had one that had swapped out pickups. For this 70s one, usually I don't like swapped out pickups and all that stuff. But this one, I thought they said it was like a stacked humbucker they put in here. But when I took all this out, I was a little bit upset to find active electronics. You do need a battery to operate all this, but I was very pleased with the tone of this guitar, so don't let that active electronic stuff scare you away. This has that woody tone that you want. It's really raw and aggressive without being over the top. I think that's just a combination of this guitar looking so simple, you're not scared to play it, plus it's just made of really nice quality woods, you know, from the original Kalamazoo factory. So once again, all electronics redone. I wish I still had the original pickups, because I'm curious if they made them any better than the 60s ones, because the 60s pickups were garbage. They're usable for a little bit, but if you really, really want to, you know, do some recording and have a bunch of different sounds, you would have wanted to replace the pickups anyways. I'm guessing the 70s ones were probably similar, so that's why this was done. Condition-wise, there's quite a few, you know, nicks, dings, and scratches as you go over it here in the lighting, but, I mean, this is a player's grade guitar. Not only was it rewired and new pickups, the layout was changed. You can see where 2 holes were filled in here on the pickguard. This way it's all in a line. I don't think these knobs are original to the guitar. I could be wrong on that though. But you've got your 3-way switch and a master volume and 2 individual tones for the neck and bridge pickup. Take a look at the back of the headstock here. You've got some light wear and tear towards the edges of the headstock, but nothing too incredibly bad. Your average light plate wear. Once again, this is kind of a 60s profile, wider feeling neck than the 60s ones, but it does look like it has a 1, 2, 3 pieces to it, so it is your standard 3-piece mahogany neck, which in an era where it's mainly maple, that is definitely cool. What I really like is the binding here. We'll see if we can focus it. You can see kind of how the wood grain has some really cool tiger striping to it in that area. There does appear to be like a touch-up right here. It looks like it was a pretty good gash in the side of the neck, but that's been filled in. You really can't feel it too much. It also looks like you have one on the side here as well. The back of the guitar isn't too chewed up. I mean, you've got some light marks, but just your average light wear and tear in general. The sides definitely have quite a few dings here, as you're seeing. But this is definitely a player's guitar. I was very surprised just how good this guitar sounds. I don't know, something about the shape of these. Whenever I buy one, it's like, oh, I got one of these funky things. But once I start playing these, they really are fantastic guitars. These double cut melody makers are. I definitely suggest you guys check one out. Take a look under blacklight here. You can see you have some light clear coat wear towards the top of the headstock, but most of the face of the headstock is good. Go ahead and look at the body here. There are quite a few little dings that look like they have been touched up, as you can see quite clearly here under black light, as well as some other light dings. Here on the back you can see some more of that clear coat wear, but all the touch-ups, they feel very even with the finish. So you can see them, but you can't necessarily feel them too much. There you can see the original serial number there. And no breaks, cracks, or repairs, as we can see here. Looks like you do have a very minor finish check there by the nut, but that is not a crack or anything like that. You also have a small ding there by the volute. Looks like on the side of the neck there is some clear coat wear, and that's that fill-in spot I was talking about earlier. It looks like this side you're pretty good. The back of the guitar, looking good as well. I mean, once again, very light touch-ups on the edges. So definitely not collector's condition. There's some more touch-ups on the side. But it's kind of nice those areas have been touched up, because now you don't have giant gashes out of the guitar. But lots of wear and tear. This one weighs a cool 6 pounds 10.4 ounces, so it's definitely very comfortable on your back. I'm not 100% sure what case this guitar would have originally came in, probably just one of the standard Gibson cases of the era right before the chainsaw. But this one has a non-original Godin Canada/USA case. As you can see, lots of wear and tear, but fairly light on the outside. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, and a back 5th latch, and a pretty nice handle. The interior is gray. I mean, it could use cleaned up a little bit, but it's not too bad. There is a very, very, very minor pet smell to the case, just for allergy people. So, I mean, it's not too overwhelming. You do have a compartment lid here as well. For an aftermarket case, the fit is really good. I mean, you can see here I'm moving it up and down, side to side. It really doesn't move too much. So it is a good case. Through a Marshall JMP 1C 1-watt tube. interested in owning this 60s reissue 1977 Gibson Melody Maker, feel free to contact me on my Facebook page, facebook.com/Troglys, Troglys, or check out the Reverb and eBay listings. Alright, Troglodytes, thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.